All right, so this week on Shabbat, there will be a double simcha. First of all, it will be Hanukkah. And secondly, we'll be reading Parshat Vayeshev, the weekly Parsha, which we will read, right, as we progress through the Torah throughout the year. Now, lest you thought for a moment that the Parshiot are coincidental, meaning that they don't necessarily relate to the time of year that they fall on. It's just, we had to split up the Torah into however many parts to conclude it every Simchas Torah. And perhaps there's no correlation between the Parshas that we're learning in Shul and whatever's happening during the year. But the truth is that the Shlach HaKadosh and others, Rabbi Lezer Horowitz from the 1500s, the great Torah scholar and mystic, he said that without a doubt, the Hashgacha, Hashem's divine providence, always arranges it that the parshas of the year align with the events of the time. So specifically, especially in these parshiot, which all have to do with Joseph and his brothers, you will find many different allusions to Chanukah. Many different allusions to Chanukah. In fact, the word Chanukah itself, I believe, Tavuach, Tevach, Ve'achen, when Joseph tells his servants to prepare food for his brothers, right, as he's the viceroy, they don't realize who he is. Those words, Tavuach, Tevach, Ve'achen, spell the word Chanukah in them, right? And all kinds of other fascinating allusions and hints. And aside from interesting textual things like that, the concept of Yosef, we'll see tonight, is quite deeply and intimately related to the victory of Hanukkah, which we are celebrating now, that tremendous military victory, but really the powers that were at odds at the time. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So first, to get started, we'll start with the Parsha, and God willing, we'll get to Hanukkah in the end. What we'll be doing tonight is shedding a lot of light on who Yosef was, conceptually, what did he have to offer, so to speak. We'll see that it was quite a significant thing that stayed with us. So let's get started. Parshat Vayeshev. It's called Vayeshev, and he dwelled. Yaakov, Vayeshev Yaakov, right? Rashi says the opening word of the Parsha is Vayeshev. Yaakov sat or dwelled. He planted himself down. So Rashi notes that this is alluding to the fact that Bikesh Yaakov Leishev Beshalva. Yaakov desired to sit in peace and serenity. I don't want any more hardship, right? My whole life. In the womb, I was fighting with Esav. Out of the womb, I fought with Esav. I had to run away from I had to connive and get the brachos. I had to run away from my life, flee from my home to Lavan. And he spent 20-something years in Lavan's home, dealing with the biggest swindler. And he finally escapes from there. And then Dinah, his daughter, is abducted. And then he has to face Esav with an army of 400 men, or maybe the other way around. Excuse me for switching the order of events, right? Disaster after disaster. He just wanted to be in peace, right? He's already old. He wants to settle in the land of Canaan. And sure enough, Rashi says, "Kafat alav rogzo shel Yosef." He desired to sit in peace, and just the opposite of his plans. Right now, in the beginning of our parsha, the first word is Vayeshev, and the rest of it is all the contention that will unfold until the end of the Sefer Bereshis. The whole dramatic story of Yosef and his brothers now unfolded, as almost as a response to Yaakov desiring to sit in peace. He gets knocked by this horrible episode of Joseph and his brothers, which was really, it shook him up. He thought his son was dead for however many years. Was it 17? So the question is like this: what led to this current episode, Yosef and the brothers, which is going to end up leading Joseph down to Egypt, and that whole disaster, right? And the Jews end up having to stay there for 400 years. This whole devolution, the spiral of events. We famously know that it was really one thing that kicked it off, right? What caused so much hatred between Yosef and his brothers? One of the main things were, I'm sure you can call it out, the Ktonet Pasim. Ktonet Pasim, that coat that Yaakov gave to his son Yosef. And in fact, the Gemara picks on Yaakov and says you should never play favorites because of that little extra coat, which costs 2 slaim, the Gemara says. Yosef got sold, and the entire Jewish people had to go down to Egypt. Right? Look what happens when you play favorites. You got him a little coat, and complete disaster ensues. So the Gemara says you should never play favorites. Now,
but didn't he do that before the coat in his dealings with Joseph?
very good. That's a very good point. The coat was just one manifestation of the favoritism that he played with Yosef, but there was actually a whole nother. There's a lot more to it. See, there's a strange light going on over here. That should do. So that is correct. That is correct. Although, interestingly, the Gemara pins it on the coat. I mean, the coat was that one expression where, aside from the day in, day out, where Yaakov seems to be playing favorites with Yosef, now there's like this physical thing. And every time Yosef wears it, the brothers see and they hate him because of that thing, right? Here it is, that physical reminder that our father loves that son more than us. So that really drove them to no end, drove them mad. And my question is a basic one. I want to open with one question, and that is, why in the world would Yaakov do this? Here we are. We're no smarter than Yaakov Avinu. I think we could take that for granted. He was a wise man, right? A prophet. If he wanted to sit in peace, then he ought to have not shooken the boat. What are you doing giving a coat to Joseph? And emphasizing how special he is and creating the jealousy between the brothers and him. It doesn't make any sense. Right? If you want to sit in peace, then stop rocking the boat. Why did you give him that coat? Question number one, if you will, just to put it in question answer format to make it a little bit user friendly. And the second question, related to Yosef, but a little bit of an aside. Rashi notes the juxtaposition between our parsha and what happened immediately beforehand in Parshat Vayishlach. Do you recall what is the last portion of last week's parsha? That last section of last week's parsha. Do you remember the topic? So you might have books there with you. You could flip back. Just what's going on right before Parshat Vayeshev starts. Any takers? So, I see that it looks like you're giving a chance, you're muted though. I want to hear what you're saying, Mr. Fox. Or maybe not.
There we go.
Yeah.
It looks like the genealogy table of Esau's family.
Very nice. Exactly.
That's what's. I mean, I've got the Chumash here.
Very good. That's what immediately precedes Parshat Vayishlach, is the genealogy of Esau's family. And Rashi says that is not for naught. Rashi says Yaakov looked up, so to speak, at all of the generations of Esau, and the many people that will come out of him, powerful leaders, Alufei Esau, right, the kings of Esau. And Yaakov kind of gets flustered and he says, "Oh my goodness, how am I going to deal with this? This is a big problem, right? Esau was one person that I had to run away from during my lifetime, but now he's got generations and children. What am I going to do with this? How am I going to deal with his offspring?" Right? Conceptually speaking, they weren't literally all alive yet, right? The Torah is telling it as it unfolds. And Rashi says the response was Yosef. Very cryptic Rashi. And he quotes a verse from the Navi, which I believe we'll read this week, that the house of Esau will be straw, and Yaakov will be fire, and Yosef is the flame. Yosef is the flame that will burn up the straw, which is Esau. Right? So somehow or another, Rashi and the Midrash and the Chazal tell us that Yosef is the antidote to the problem of Esau. Somehow Yosef is the response to deal with this terrible threat of Esau. And that is a question unto itself. Really? Yosef is going to solve the Esau problem? We actually have a case where they encountered one another. Yosef and Esau did meet during their lifetime. That happened last week in the beginning of the Parsha, when Yaakov is approaching and Esau comes to him with 400 men. So Yosef was there. Now, perhaps over there we could see the tremendous role that Joseph played to protect against Esau. Not at all. He was a peanut, right? He stood there in front of his mother. They all bowed. They all said, "Thank you, hello, Mr. Esav," and that was it. So what? Okay, so that wasn't really a remarkable performance. So in what sense is Joseph the answer to Esav? That's question number 2. Okay, so we've got 2 questions on the table. That's all we're going to be asking tonight. Number 1, if Yaakov wanted to sit in peace, why did he play favorites? Why give Joseph that coat? Why show him so much favoritism? And question number 2 is, what does it mean when Chazal say that Joseph is the response to Esav? In what way is he the solution and the antidote to deal with the problem of Esav? Okay, that's those 2 questions will chart our territory tonight. Based on them, we will be charting our territory to get to the bottom of these things, and we'll uncover some fantastic ideas, God willing. Okay? Yes, the questions are clear? All right. So without further ado, let's get rolling. Let me pull up my source sheet here. Okay. There is a very strange pasuk in Tehillim, Psalms, and it refers to the Jewish people with an expression that we don't find anywhere else in Tanakh. We typically know that we are called Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel. Sometimes the Torah will refer to us as Bnei Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the children of the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But in Tehillim, chapter 77, it says, Ga'alta b'zroa amecha, you redeemed your children from Egypt with a strong hand. And the concluding phrase of the verse is, Bnei Yaakov veYosef, Selah. The children of Yaakov and Yosef. Selah, which means like forever, an expression of praise. You've redeemed us from Egypt, the children of Yaakov and the children of Yosef. Suddenly, we've discovered that, in fact, we have a 4th father. Right? We know we only had 3, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Suddenly, we find that the Jewish people are being referred to as the children of Yosef. In some sense, Yosef was our father. That implies that he imbued us and infused us with a certain quality, just like one of the fathers did, right? Abraham was the pillar of kindness. Yitzchak was the pillar of gevura and justice and self-control. And Yaakov was mercy and emes, right? That delicate balance between the two. And now suddenly we have a 4th father. What did he contribute? Where have we found such a concept? And indeed, the Midrash says on this pasuk that it's in the merit of Yosef that we were redeemed from Egypt. And in his merit, right, aside from the fathers, in Yosef's merit, we were redeemed from Egypt, and we're called the children of Yosef. In his merit, which means that we all carry something of Yosef within us, regardless of what tribe you're from. That's the point here. But just like we're all children of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, you could be born from any of the 12 tribes. In some sense, in a broader and a deeper spiritual sense, we're somehow the children of Yosef as well. Obviously not biological. That would only be 1 or 2 of the tribes, right? Menashe and Ephraim. But the rest of us who are born from other tribes are still somehow the children of Yosef. What does that mean? What did he contribute to the Jewish people? And with that, I think we ought to get to this famous coat, right? The Technicolor dream coat, as we know it from the movies or the plays, I should say. Yeah. What's the deal with this coat? The Ketonet Pasim. So the most famous interpretation of what the word Pasim means is a striped coat, right? It was striped with many different colors. That's the story that I grew up with. That is one interpretation in Chazal, that it was a striped and multicolored coat. But the overwhelming one is different, in fact. It wasn't necessarily a striped coat. It might have been striped and colorful. That is certainly one interpretation. But the main point was it was a ketonet pasim. It means a royal garment. It's a garment of royalty. Pas means the palm of your hand. The royal people would wear robes that got up to the palm of their hand. And that indicated that they were not in the working class, because they don't have to hold a shovel or anything like that. They don't have to hold tools. Therefore, they wore robes to the palm of their hand to show that like we're separate and above the lower class people. And in fact, we find one or two times in Tanakh where the royal family is wearing a ketonet pasim, this exact phrase, ketonet pasim. When Yaakov gave Yosef a ketonet pasim, that coat, what he was doing was he was promoting him and putting him in a position above the other brothers. And the reason I would like to argue to you is not simply because he was a favorite. Obviously, our dear father Yaakov would not play favorites in a foolish and a small-minded way. What was happening was Yosef had some valuable, essential quality to give all of the Jewish people. As we see from that verse in Tehillim we opened with, we are the children of Yosef. Jacob saw that. He saw that Yosef had something, and that something had to go to the other children. Therefore, he puts him above the rest of the family. He gives him this ketonet pasim. He gives him this royal garment, this robe of the nobles. And he says to him, I want you to look after the brothers. I want you to train them. He's basically trying to put them in some sort of training camp or a boot camp, I don't know what to call it, where Yosef will be able to give over this quality to the brothers. Okay, now we're leaving a big question mark in. What is that quality? What is the special thing that Yosef has? Why would Yaakov, that Yaakov saw, and he wanted Yosef to give to the other brothers? So now we have to get to work. Okay, we have to take a look at Yosef's life, and we have to see, is there one quality somehow that underlies so much of what happened to him during his life? I think a safe place to start perhaps would be with his greatest success. From there we see, right, the greatest success, the thing that's attributed to him most famously, and he gets all the trophies and accolades for, that will tell us a lot about, who he is, what he had to fight for, what was going on deep inside of him. So if you had to pick one event from Joseph's life that was perhaps his most astounding achievement, what would it be? I'll open it up to you. There's not necessarily an incorrect answer. You don't have to be afraid, because whatever episode you choose, we're going to have to find how that actually plays out through the rest of his life. So, yeah,
surviving the prison.
Surviving the prison. In what sense?
It's dangerous.
It's a dangerous, yes, certainly, especially Egyptian prison, literally, it was in a pit, right? Very nice. Surviving the prison was certainly a tremendous feat.
Knowing how to haze his brothers.
Once he was put on top, that amazing self-control that he had to to put his brothers through hell.
To haze them. That was a hazing.
I hear.
Well, I think it's the transformation of his brothers. When he accused them of stealing, of Benjamin stealing the gold cup or whatever it was. That whole lesson of bringing the whole family together, because these brothers became the tribes, and do it. But Joseph wasn't. But remember, King David came out of the tribe of Benjamin, if I remember it right.
Out of Yehuda. Out of Yehuda.
Yehuda.
Yeah.
So not Joseph.
Right.
So interesting thing there too.
Yeah, that's true. Right. As prominent as he is and as significant he is, he's not the leader as we see throughout the generations. Physically, the king came from Judah. Right. You're absolutely right. Therefore, you have to say that what Yosef had to offer was not necessarily a person, more than a profound quality, which we're going to uncover tonight. Let me plug in my device for me. There we are. That's something that my rabbi never had to say in yeshiva. I have to plug my device in. Right. So you're pointing out the so-called hazing, which is a playful term for it. It was more purposeful, and he was actually training them and molding them to be the tribes that they had to be. Very nice. We're going to address all of that. There's one famous incident that Chazal praise him for to no end, and that is the incident with the wife of his master Potiphar. Ashes Potiphar, as she's known in Chazal. Potiphar was who he was sold to in Egypt. The brothers put him in a pit. They lifted him up to sell him to a caravan. The caravan sold him to another caravan, who sold him to another caravan, who took him to Egypt. And finally, he was put in the house of a man named Potiphar. Potiphar, who was one of the ministers of Pharaoh. And his wife made it her life's mission to seduce Joseph. Without going into why she wanted to do that, she saw in astrological signs that they were meant to have a child together, but it was actually not with her, it was with her daughter. But she didn't know that. Either way, she made it her life's mission to seduce Yosef. Yosef was an incredibly attractive person. She had a very strong desire for him aside from the astrology. It was simple lust which was driving her. And day in, day out, she tried to seduce him. The Midrash goes to details about what she tried to do. She would change her clothes 3 times a day, to display, to put herself on display for him and try to attract his attention. When he tried to turn away because that's not what I should be doing with my with my master's wife, she made him wear a spike under his neck that it would make it difficult for him to look away. We try, right? Literally day in, day out, until the day came where the entire household went out to go worship their idols. She faked sick and stayed at home. And now was her chance. It was just her and that foreign slave boy who's not going to the temple today. And she said, I finally have you. And she literally grabbed him by the robes and said, I'll destroy your life if you don't succumb to me. And sure enough, he ducks out of the robe and runs into the streets. Ramban writes he didn't pull his robe away from her because it would be disrespectful to his mistress. Isn't that interesting? He didn't want to disrespect her by ripping something out of her hands. So he ducked out of the robes and ran naked into the streets to escape. Of course, she started screaming, pretending that he tried to seduce her, flip the whole story around because she realized it's going to look fishy. And that's how he's thrown into jail. Okay, so the Chazal make a tremendous deal about this. That self-control. She was an extremely beautiful lady. She was rich and powerful. She could destroy his life. She could give him unbelievable wealth if he did listen to her. She was trying day in, day out to attract her. And think of the challenge. As far as he knows, we read the end of the story. We know that he's going to end up reuniting with his brothers and all that happy stuff. But he did not know the end of the story. As far as he knew, he was completely abandoned. He would never see his family again. He would be left in Egypt forever and ever and ever.
But he could have been killed. He could have been killed if he were caught having an affair with her.
Yes, but he could also have been killed for not having an affair. She was trying to get him killed afterwards. But the master said her husband knew that he wasn't at fault because Yosef was such a earnest servant. He said, there's no way. So you know what? I'm just going to throw you in jail. But it was a lose-lose situation. So the physical threat was there anyway. That's what I'm trying to tell you, Mr. Levine. And so all he had now was a physical threat, which is on both sides, so they cancel each other out, right? Yes or no, you're anyways going to die. All that's left is tremendous lust and pressure to succumb to this lady. You're the only Jew in 1,000,000 miles. You will never see your family again. It doesn't matter at all what you do. Your brothers hate you. They threw you in a pit and they sold you as a slave. They don't care about you. You're without context. You're in a foreign land. And day in, day out, you're being pressured by her. And he did not succumb. Chazal say that it's in his merit that the sea split. When the Hayam Ra'av Ayanos will say in Hallel tomorrow morning, the sea saw and it ran away. The sea saw and it fled before the Jewish people. The Mishnah asks, the Midrash asks, what did the sea look at? What did the sea observe? It observed the casket of Joseph. And it said, just like he overcame his nature to flee from that lady, I will overcome my nature and flee from the Jewish people, and it split. Right? So in that merit of his tremendous self-control, we merited the sea splitting and all these fantastic things. Okay, so in addition to his surviving prison, in addition to his masterful work putting his brothers in the right place where they needed to be, the most praised achievement of his life is his ability to overcome his mistress. the desire to be with his mistress, Eshet Potiphar, his master's wife. Now, okay, that is what Chazal give him the gold for. And the question is, what's the underlying drive over there? Now, on the surface, I think we'd all say, okay, he had self-control. I was able to overcome my physical desire for sexual immorality. A tremendous thing, and he overcame it. Yeah.
Why? I mean, if he thought he was going to die from having an affair, then that would be a reason not to. If he thought he was going to die if he would or would not have an affair, then why would he have not just had an affair?
Correct. Very good.
So logically, he must have thought that he wouldn't die if he didn't have the affair.
There might be another reason a person doesn't want to have an affair aside from getting caught by humans. And that is, right, fear of God. Or we'll see another thing in a moment, which is even a more shocking. Right? It's tremendous self-control it took. And we'll see his motive. We'll see his motive in a moment. It's an excellent question. It took him some self-control to overcome it. But beyond self-control, there's another thing at work over here, and Chazal identify it. So I'd like to take a bit of a detour through the rest of Yosef's life. Let's look quickly. We'll run through 4 other episodes in Joseph's life quickly, and we'll come right back to this event, and we'll see how there's really something deeper that's going on under the coat over here, underneath over here. What's driving him? What's motivating him to stay strong against his master's wife? All right, the 4 episodes are, as we run through them, the search for his brothers, when his father sends him out and he has to go look for his brothers to gather news for his father Jacob before he gets sold. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at his servitude to his master Potiphar, what happened in his house, during his tenure, aside from this whole episode of the mistress. We're going to look at what happened to him in prison, which you mentioned, and we'll look at what happened to him while he was viceroy of Egypt and in charge of the entire Egyptian economy. Okay, and when we look at those 4, we'll find one underlying feature and quality of Joseph, which is so incredible. And that will be the driving feature during this episode with his master's wife. Number 1, Yaakov Avinu, the search for his brothers. Yaakov Avinu, his sons, the other 10 tribes, the young Binyamin is at home. The other 10 tribes are out, taking care of the sheep, some far off place. Yaakov says to Joseph, please go gather some news for me. Tell me how my sons are doing over there. Chazal say that Yosef knew that if he were to go and meet the brothers in some far off place, his life was at risk. He knew that they hated him, and he knew that they thought that halachically he should be dead. They had halachic stamp for a good reason. They wanted to kill him, and his life would be at risk if he would go meet them. Nevertheless, he goes to find them. He said, yes, he says to his father, Hineni, here I am at your service, a complete submissiveness and servitude to his father. He goes out to look for them, and what happens? A man sees him stumbling about in the field. He can't find his brothers. So at that point, I would say, whoosh, close call. Father sent me here to look for my brothers. I got lucky, they're not here. I can go back to my dad and say, sorry, I didn't find them where they were supposed to be. That's not what happens. What happens is he finds this stranger out in the field, and he says to him, have you seen my brothers? 10 strong men? And they said, yeah, they went that way. They went Dotaina. They went to a place called Dotan. And he goes and he follows them over there to Dotan. We have to appreciate the Herculean effort it must have taken to do that. Not only does he not give up and go right back home to save his life when he can't find his brothers, but he goes around and around to the extent where a stranger says, hey, what are you looking for? He caught people's attention. He must have been so actively searching, so aggressive in trying to fulfill his father's word, that he caught the attention of the locals where a stranger asked him, hey, what are you looking for? And he said, I'm looking for my brothers. And he goes and he goes after them to that place where they are. And sure enough, they planned on killing him. They ended up selling him. what leads to such dedication to his father's mission? His father said, go check after your brothers. He will do it, even if his life is at risk. And even if it becomes difficult, he'll go around and around searching for them until he fulfills that task that he was commissioned with. Number two, he's sold to Egypt and he becomes the slave of Potiphar. Within no time, within less than a year, he is put in charge of Potiphar's entire estate. He had the keys to every single room and treasury in the whole place. The only thing that he didn't have rights to was the master's wife. That's what the pasuk says. Except for the bread of his mouth, which is a euphemism for his wife, he had rights to everything. Tell me, this is a foreigner that just came from who knows where. You bought him off of a caravan, and you're giving him the keys to your treasury and all your secret passwords to everything, right? Like he had all the email passwords, the bank account information, everything. You just gave it over to him. What on earth possessed Potiphar, probably a wise and shrewd man, to be able to be in such a high position in Egypt? What possessed him to give Yosef such power within 1 year of meeting him? You have no idea who this foreign worker is, an illegal immigrant. Obviously, Yosef had shown himself to be so dedicated and so committed to his master's well-being that it was obvious. I'll give you the keys to everything. I know that I can trust you 100%. 100%. He's thrown into prison. Sure enough, he becomes the head in the prison. Of the slaves, he becomes in charge of the other prisoners. Again, showing his sincerity and commitment and honesty and straightness, he is put in charge of the other prisoners. And look what a job he does. At the end of our parsha, we have the dreams of the butler and the baker, right? The butler and the baker, they both have dreams, and they're distraught, and they want to figure out what the interpretation to their dreams is. Now, how does that whole episode start with their dreams? Yosef comes to them, he says, hey, I see that you look distraught this morning. And tell me, if you're put in you're put in charge in a prison, a bunch of thugs, right? So you wake up in the morning, you throw their dry bread at them, and you go back to your cell, do whatever you want. Like, what do I care about a prisoner with a frown on his face? But no, Yosef Hatzadik was in charge of the prisoners. So if I was put in charge of the prisoners, then I really have to care for them in every possible way. Aside from providing their food in the morning, I'm going to look at their faces and see, do they look all right? Do they look distraught? Is something the matter? If this is my job, then I'm going to do it to the fullest. I'm going to be so responsible, so reliable, to have such integrity and be committed to my job that I'll even notice when those lowly prisoners seem to be a little bit off this morning. I ask them, what's happening? And they tell them the dreams. Okay, so time and again, we're seeing this. When he searched for his brother, extreme dedication to his father's mission that he gave him. When he was when he became a slave in the household of Potiphar, extreme dedication to the task that he was given. So he rise to the top. When he was when he came to prison, extreme dedication, he rose to the top, and he took such good care that he noticed people sad. And sure enough, he becomes the viceroy of Egypt. That's location number 4 that we'll be visiting on our detour. He becomes the viceroy of Egypt, in charge of the entire Egyptian economy. The pasuk in next week's parsha says, "V'ta'as haaretz likmatzim." The land produced grain in the years of plenty, likmatzim. A kometz is a fistful. Rashi says that Yosef, who was in charge of the whole grain and storage system, everything, he had measured the grain by the fistful. The entire land of Egypt, which had enough food and silos filled with grains and crops to feed the entire world. They were coming to, or that, at least that region, coming to them in the years of famine. Yosef had measured everything by the fistful. Every single morsel was accounted for under Yosef's charge. Imagine, right? Who cares? A few more grains this way, a few more grains that way. No. Yosef was so scrupulous, so careful with every little measurement that he made. Why? Who cares? Right? It's not my grain. Even Paro is not going to find out. He's the only one. He's keeping it count to the books, right? Nobody's looking over him. The only reason is because this is my job, so I'm going to be extremely dedicated to it. This is what we've seen time and again throughout Yosef's life. Profound reliability, profound integrity, and dedication, commitment to the mission that you're charged with. There's one word to sum up that quality: commitment, reliability, integrity. In Hebrew, it's called ne'emanut, the same root as emunah. I'm a ne'eman, ne'emanus in the Ashkenazi pronunciation. Ne'emanut means you can depend on me. Just like when we have emunah, we believe, we have faith, we believe in God. I mean, we depend on him completely. I know that he'll come through no matter what. Even if it means, slicing through a mountain, he can do it. To be a ne'eman is to have that quality where people can rely on you. He is a ne'eman, steadfast despite all the pressures in the world, right? So whether it's searching for your brothers under the threat of death, whether it's a foreign worker who doesn't really have anything to hope for during his lifetime, whether you're in a prison, whether you're the viceroy of Egypt, doesn't matter what situation you're put in, you will stay true and completely committed and ne'eman to your mission. This was the secret power of Yosef HaTzadik. And that is exactly the quality, coming back full circle now, that's exactly the quality that enabled him to overcome the seduction of Potiphar's wife. More than just what we call self-control. It was ne'emanut. In fact, the verse itself says, when his mistress says to him, "Come lie with me, I want you to be with me," he says to her, that would be dishonest to my master. Rashi says, Ramban, says, his master, not referring to God. The master who's put me in charge. This is my job, and I need to be. It wouldn't be nice to my master. I can't do that. That's not. He trusted me with a mission, and I cannot betray him. I will never betray my value. Never betray my value. Completely steadfast and ne'eman. Aside from the value I have to stay fearing of God and not do any sin. In addition to that, even if a man has placed me in charge of something and trusted me with something, I will be completely and utterly reliable. Under no circumstance will I break my word. A fantastic, fantastic quality. And that's what the Midrash says was the underlying quality which allowed him to overcome Eshet Potiphar. I think now I think we're armed to figure out what that verse in Tehillim means. Right? We've seen throughout the entire life of Yosef HaTzadik this one thread of ne'emanut, reliability, integrity. That's the special quality of Yosef. That is what makes Yosef our father. It's that which he needed to imbue the Jewish people with. The ability to stand strong and steadfast despite all the pressures and winds of the world trying to push us over. It's that ability that Yosef HaTzadik imbued us with. Right? He is the foundation which allows us to stand. So why did Yaakov Avinu play favorites? Because there was a very important thing to teach his sons. In fact, it's because he wanted to sit in peace. But Bikesh Yaakov l'shev b'shalva, he wanted to live a peaceful life, no more contention, no more strife, no more fighting between my brother Esav and all this mess. I need to have a firm ground to sit on. You want firm ground? Then you have to promote Yosef to teach the brothers. Because if they're lacking this quality, then the next time a strong pressure comes, it's going to be disaster. Unfortunately, it didn't go so easily. And it ended up being a situation of strife anyway. But this quality was essential to imbue with the children with. I don't want to take too much more of your time. So I'll come quickly now. And how is Yosef the antidote to Esav? We'll address that second question we asked. This really brings us to Hanukkah, obviously. Hopefully you'll be seeing it now. Esav had control over Yaakov in one area. When Yaakov wrestled with the angel of Esav, there was one weakness which the angel was able to hit him in. The Gid HaNasher, the sciatic nerve, right there in the side. And Yaakov walked away limping from that battle. That is the one area. Walked away limping, right? the very place on which we stand on firm ground, that's where Esav hit it. He made us shaky. A person who's not able to stand firm. We're missing that ability to stand firm, and that which Yosef has to fill in. Right? Yosef is the response to that trouble with the Gid Hanashe. Incidentally, he names his son Menashe, which the Zohar and other Midrashim connect to the Gid Hanashe, that sciatic nerve that Esav had control over. Yosef produced a son who is an exact response to that. I won't go too far into that because the hour is late. And that, of course, was essential for the Hanukkah story. Right? You had these Chashmonaim who had every reason in the world. You could do all the mitzvahs, just don't believe in God, right? All the pressures were coming at them. We'll be nice to you. You'll live amongst us. You'll have everything you need. Just don't do X. That was a challenge. Right? They wanted to Hellenize us. And we were able to stand firm and against them and say, no. You're challenging my values. I'm already committed to something. And I will not waver no matter what, even if it means that I have to take on the entire Greek army. Right? The ancient Hanukkah stories tell us these remarkable, overly fantastic stories about this small family of Chashmonaim, we call the Maccabees, taking on an army of thousands somehow. Right? What would lead you to do something so crazy? Because I'm committed. And if you're challenging me and you're asking me to fold on one of my values, it's not going to happen. I will fight the entire world before folding on my value. I will give my entire life and all of my energy. Not just that I won't fold, but I will vigorously and aggressively pursue my values and make sure that they're preserved, right? Yosef didn't just not succumb, right? He made sure to create the greatest economic system. He didn't just not steal. He didn't, right? He created the most unbelievable accounting system, and he did all the billing work, everything. Backdoor for the Egypt economy. In every situation he was in, he vigorously pursued whatever he had to uphold the value and do what was right. And that was the special koach, the special power that he was able to imbue with us, the Jewish people, with. That's how we are the children of Yosef, and that's how we were able to overcome the Greek ideology and create the miracle of Hanukkah. Those are the thoughts I wanted to share with you this week. Any questions? All right. If there are no questions, then I bid you a happy Hanukkah and a wonderful night. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you. Freilich Hanukkah.
Freilich Hanukkah.
That's a good one.
Thank you. Laila Tov.
Be safe.
You too.